Surviving yourself. See, at least you're surviving yourself. All right, everyone, welcome. I think it's about time to get us started. You all know me. I like to get things moving and like to start on time so we can end on time, right? Welcome to everybody, and a nice welcome to all of you out there that are watching us on a live stream, whether it's YouTube or Facebook. Glad to have everybody. Happy to see everyone. If you are here specifically to see Tom McLaughlin, I am apologizing for Tom. He was not able to make it. I'm very bummed. I talked to Tom the other day. They had the truck that he was going to be hauling his camper across the country had transmission trouble. So he was getting back on the road, but he was going to have to cut his trip short. Unfortunately, we were the farthest west that he was going to come, so we were on the cut list, unfortunately. So Tom sends his apologies, and he says he's going to make it up for us, and we'll do a Zoom meeting with him, hopefully in the near future. So we'll be in touch with Tom, and maybe one day we'll get him on in person. So you get sloppy seconds on your presentation tonight. I'm going to handle a little presentation. So couple of things. We have a lot of big stuff going on in the guild. So a couple of meetings ago, we said that our lease runs out in May. Just to clarify, that's May of 24. So a couple of people were thinking May of 23. This is the last time. So we're not cutting off immediately, but a little update on the move. We've been checking out places. We've toured. I personally have gone through 3 or 4, and I think we've got a team that has gone through a ton of places. We're doing our best to find a good spot that is in a good location, accessible to the metro. We want to be financially responsible for our guild. For our members, we've been really happy with our low membership dues, especially with what we get. A lot of amazing craftsmen, a lot of teachers, a great shop. I wouldn't be shocked, you all, if once we move, that our prices are going to go up. Our fees are going to, our rent. We're getting a really good deal here, so we're going to probably expect to go up significantly in cost. Therefore, you should all not be shocked to have an increase in dues, and we'll try to make it as economical as we can. Hopefully everyone understands what we have to do. I think we've upped our dues one time in like the last 9 years. So as you all know, that's not, it doesn't cost $6 to go to Wendy's anymore. If y'all, costs probably $12 for me when I get the double and extra large. So that's the update on the move. Gonna go quickly. We've got some big things. So officers' reports. Mike, do you have anything to talk about tonight? Next is David. I know we've got our vote to go. So right now we're going to call to order our general meeting per our bylaws. We want to do this officially. So come on up, David, and we'll take care of our vote.
7:02 p.m. All right.
You.
Good evening.
Oh, that was muted. Yep.
You good?
Grab the green one.
Hello.
There you are.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's try this again. Good evening, everyone. All right. All right. Good seeing everyone. All right. Today is we're going to be doing our elections, so we want to go ahead and do this. I'm going to start from the top. It's a special session of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. The purpose of the special session is the election of board members and directors. We have a slate of officers. The slate are Secretary David Roth and Treasurer is John Steyer. It was a test. Chris was testing me.
Yeah.
Gary, guess what?
We did.
No, we're kidding. John Steyer, are you in the house? Could you stand up, please? This is John, going to be our new elected treasurer. It's up for election. Directors' names are Chuck Saunders for Assets Director, Chris McCauley, Events Director, Matthew Nowak, Program Director, Dwayne Miller, Sponsorship Director. The term for each position is 2 years. The other board of director positions are elected in the even number years. If you voted by email, please refrain from voting today. If you have not voted and are a member in good standing, that is, if your dues are paid, we encourage you to vote this evening. Here are the slate of officers we just presented and the directors that we presented. All in favor, raise your hand, please, who has not voted yet. All right, so can someone come around and start counting on this side, Craig? And then Chris, could you count this side here? If you have already voted, please put your hand back down. Thank you.
So 10 on this side. 13. So 23 total votes. And do we need to see if people disagree?
Are there any opposed? All right.
All right, that's 0.
With the email ballots that we have received, we are going to go to adjourn this meeting, and we're going to go to do a tabulation. We'll report back to you to the membership after the break. It's now 7:05.
Awesome. We're going to take a quick break. Chris is going to run through some of the announcements as the board has a quick meeting to establish positions on the board.
All right, we're going to go ahead and skip down to the SIGs. Remember, we do that a little bit later, but go ahead and do that right now. Hand tool SIGs. We have anyone here from Hand tool SIG? No. Hand tool SIG, next hand tool SIG is going to be April 23rd, meets the 4th Sunday of the month from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, usually over here in classroom 2. Wood carvers, you come up. You come up and talk about your SIG? You don't have to, but come on up.
All right.
Well, we meet
So I
the
guess
4th
votes from the emails and 23 today, so we have a total of 124 votes.
Tuesday of every month. Okay?
Yep.
We got it together?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, now what our little SIG meeting is growing, but it's concentrated on traditional carving, power carving, and then pyrography, which is wood burning. And if you're down that road and you need some help or have any questions, we've got a lot of skilled people that can help and work through it, but that's where we meet for a couple hours. It starts at 6 and goes to 8.
Next one is the 25th?
Is that the 4th Tuesday? Yep. Okay.
Cool.
That's where it's at.
I like it. All right, laser engrave. Mike's in the meeting over here. They meet on the 4th Wednesday. That's going to be the 26th, the day after the wood carvers. Meet at 7 o'clock, either over here at the laser or in the library. If you have not been certified on the laser engraver, they will be doing training after the SIG. Scroll saw, John. John, you talk about scroll saw? Oh, everything's up to date on the scroll saw. So our next scroll saw is going to be May 10th. Do you guys have a theme for the meeting? No theme for the meeting. Meets at 7 o'clock on the 2nd Wednesday over in the scroll saw room. Awesome. And CNC, Gary or Ed? Gary? Gary, any updates on the CNC? Anything we need to know? Okay. Had a meeting yesterday for the CNC. They meet the 3rd Tuesday of the month, so usually the Tuesday before the meeting. So the next one's going to be May 6th. So if you're interested in learning about CNC, send a message to Gary, and they meet the... He'll send you an email about what you need to do to get on CNC. The next meeting is May 16th, the 3rd Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30. Right, hand it back to Guy. CNCs are done.
Well, we had a quick meeting. David, do you want to give a summary of our meeting?
All right, we are going to finish off the election results as followed. The election appointment of John Steyer as treasurer and appointment of David Roth secretary. These leadership committee members have been approved. Also for the directors, they have also been approved. You want me to do them all again? Say them all over again? All right, we're good.
Yeah, so we're going to close this portion of the legal portion or the voting portion, the official portion. Do I have a motion from a member to close that session? Do we have a second? Okay, lots of seconds. Everyone agree, say aye. Aye. Anybody want to keep it open? Well, you're outvoted. All right. Motion passed. In all seriousness, thank you to the leadership committee members that are staying on. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you, John, for stepping up and running, unopposed for the treasurer. Thank you, Gary, for your long time service as treasurer. We thought we would make that a lifetime appointment, but it just didn't have the legs that I thought it would. Yeah. Well, he has big shoes to fill, but we're looking forward to working with you, John. So welcome. And thanks everybody for voting. We appreciate it. And that portion is closed. And you got through all of the SIGs, right? Awesome. So financial update. I guess I could ask John, do you have a financial update? Or Gary, do you have a financial update? All right, we have enough money to pay our bills. I kind of gave a little financial update based on the future, things we're going to have to deal with. Chuck, is Chuck back there? Does he have things to sell? I haven't seen Chuck. Is he? Oh, he is right there. Right there. You're so skinny. I didn't see you there.
We have Baltic birch to sell.
Baltic birch for sale. That's hard to find, so you might want to jump on that.
We have boxes to make.
Boxes to
Sign up
make.
for that.
So look for the sign-ups, the turf boxes, which are another a reason that our membership dues are as low as they are, because we have some diligent members that really help us out and get fees for the guild. So sign up and help out in that effort. Brian Rohrbaugh. Brian, do you have any announcements tonight, Brian? No announcements. Newsletter. Ron did another great job on the newsletter, and we did make some last-minute adjustments, which is much appreciated, letting everyone know about Tom not being here. So if you didn't see that, it wasn't a newsletter. But thanks to all of you who are writing articles. Please consider writing something. You're doing a cool project. You saw something cool on vacation, or just something on your mind. Write an article. We'd love to have that content. Don has magazines for sale and books for sale as usual. Magazines are 25 cents a piece or 5 for $1. Books are $1 a piece in books. So that's a deal if you ever saw one right there. Go check it out. A lot of good content there. Just a reminder that we do have a Facebook page. We have a Facebook group. So if you want to get online and enter the discussion, please do. We have an Instagram account. I know that I'm one of the people in the guild that does post and on the Instagram some of my work, and I usually hashtag the guild, trying to get a little bit of interaction out there, and it's kind of fun. So if you haven't done that, you might want to think about it. But you can also go there and see what it is. And then we do have a Twitter page, but I've never interacted with that, truth be told. As far as YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. So if you missed a meeting or you missed a skill builder, Chris always puts those up on YouTube. Chris, do you have anything special you want to talk about there?
No, I had someone the other day question on the YouTube channel. If you go to our channel, we have at the top there's a part that says videos. You can click to see past videos that have been uploaded. All of our meetings now and most of our skill builders are actually recorded live. So the tab right next to videos says live, that you can see our past live videos. I've got someone we're working on getting some updates to update the information, so it makes it easier for you guys to find content on there. And always remember to like and subscribe. And also check out our podcast on the YouTube channel or whatever platform you stream your podcast on.
All right. Do you want to go on? Did you talk about events, Chris? Do you want to talk about those now?
Yeah, you're off right now. So events, got some stuff coming up later in the summer and in the fall. But this weekend, this upcoming weekend, April 22nd, out at L&K, we're doing another Mill and Grill. Some emails went out about that. How many here have gone to the Mill and Grill before? Quite a few. So those have been, I think we all had a pretty good time. Cammy's a really good cook, and Larry's so shy he won't talk to anyone. So I talked to him today. I did receive some emails, people asking if they could bring their children. I confirmed with Larry, yes, this is a family-friendly event. So if you have kids or grandkids, we do want to remind you that it's not a playhouse. It's not Chuck E. Cheese. As long as the kids are maintained, there is heavy equipment and sharp things around. But it is a great chance for them to get introduced a little bit into some woodworking. And so Larry's got some surprises. We're going to be doing, he said, I think quarter sawn cherry and walnut, and we might get into some oak, and maybe so Larry's planning on having a great time. We always do out there. So if you haven't come out before, even if you have, please come out, bring your lawn chairs. They ask you to bring a side dish and dessert, something like that, and we always have a great time. So check out the email on that went out to get signed up for that and information. I believe we'll have a group here, meet here to carpool out. If anyone that is here is going and they want to carpool, if they can meet with me at some point after the meeting, we can work that out to get all that information for you guys. So, guys, check out this weekend out at L&K for the Mill and Grill.
Awesome. Running down the list. Membership. Jim, I saw you were out there waiting with bated breath. All good tonight? How's your golf game? All bad. 877 members. So, do we have any new members tonight? I blew right past that. Welcome to the guild. And in the back as well, new member in the back. And do we have visitors that are visiting with us who are not members tonight? Just checking us out. Awesome. Welcome. Thanks for coming out to the guild. You future members, I'm assuming. So welcome. Programs. I haven't seen Matt tonight, but that's right. He's coming tonight. I think he's going back and forth on some other meetings, other obligations. I kind of updated you all on the programs tonight. As far as safety, I don't think Steve is here, but do we have any safety items to discuss tonight? No accident. Yeah, let's keep it. We have a pretty good safety record, good safety program, so we appreciate all of you being as diligent as you can. This is, I think we like to all go back home with the same amount of blood that we came in with. Safety committee meetings are the second Tuesday of the month at 7. So Steve's always looking for new people to be on the committee. Rough to ready, any announcements, Mike?
Not right off. Dates are filling up.
Dates are filling up. So if you're interested, take a look at the class schedule. Sponsorship, Dwayne, do you have any items to talk through? Raffle table. Got announcements back there?
We have stuff in the raffle.
I think what is this? I don't know. Apparently it's beeswax paste. No clue. I've been told that this is veneer. Saw stop hat. What are you? I can't read upside down. Mortise and tenon jig apparently. Dust thingy. The thing we always have. 1, 2, 3 blocks. Dovetail jig and big blue bench. Please buy them.
That's nice stuff back there. So if you're meant to buy some raffle tickets and you haven't done it yet, make sure you get back there at the break. Good stuff, and hopefully David Roth doesn't win what you want, because he typically does. And then I haven't seen Norm here, but I just wanted to see if there was a training update that we can share. I know that Kevin's still recovering right now, so maybe we won't have an update there unless someone has something to talk about training or classes. Well, that's good. I was able to plow through that pretty fast. You got through the SIGs. I think right now we go right into everyone's favorite time, show and tell. So if you've got a show and tell item, go ahead and line up over there, and Jim, come on up and be the maestro. Chris, you going to have both mics on? Is this one on? Yep. Okay.
You first?
I'm first.
Okay. Frank has his privileges.
I've already seen what's up there, so I get this out of the way so that I won't be as embarrassed when everybody else finishes. Made a hatchet handle. I was given this by one of the executives down at Scout office. He found, this is one of those estate sale finds. He found that hatchet for $2, and the handle was completely broken on it. So I found a piece of walnut and created a handle from scratch. The interesting part was that it's recessed back into the metal. So I actually had to make a rabbet on the edge of the wood in order to get it to fit back inside.
Show him that stamp on there. You got a finish on it?
It's got 3 coats of boiled linseed oil. I don't know. I don't think you can see it, but there's a Boy Scout stamp on there. Oh. Well, see, in my defense, it was covered up. You covered it up for me.
Okay, so this, got any idea when this hatchet was made?
We looked it up. Pick up your microphone.
Okay.
We looked it up. Brian and I looked it up on the internet. Found it on eBay. It's about 1930, 1932.
Wow.
So, but it was total rust when it was given to me, and they said, I need a handle for it, and I said, okay. I looked at it and said, well, it's kind of like the scale of a knife, and I've taken Mike Jones' knife class, so I knew basically how to do scale. The problem was I really didn't have a pattern to go by, and so it was all kind of made up as I went. Got it all attached. I'm presenting it to him tomorrow.
You're giving this to?
The guy that asked me to make the handle.
Oh, okay. So where did they find it?
It was an estate sale.
Oh, okay.
He bought it for $2.
So they have no idea its
I
source?
offered to double his money. I told him I'd give him $5 for it. He said no.
Okay.
Especially after I sent him a picture of what it looked like now.
Good.
So, like I say, I know well enough. I've seen what's over there. I get the junk one out of the way first.
No, that's good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
Have a mandala, and I will put it here. This is 9 layers of Baltic birch plywood, including the solid back. And I did this on a scroll saw. I did this on the laser over there. So the pattern came from designbundles.net. Was one of a big group, 5 different patterns. It was like $8 for all the patterns. So if you haven't seen that website, check that out. What's that? You can't hear me? I think I'm going to change microphones.
That one's. Hold on. Oh, let me turn it on.
No, there we go. So the pattern came from designbundles.net. If you have not checked out that website, there was 5 of these different mandalas, and I think I paid $8 for all of it, just a digital download. And you can make these things any size you want. It'll work on the CNC as well as the laser. So a lot of opportunity there. Anyway, my granddaughter picked out the colors, and and she gave me guidance on what color needs to go where. So I think she did a good job.
Where are you going with this? What do you plan to do with?
Well, I plan to sell them.
Okay. So there's a market for these?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there is. And great big ones can, be a focal point in an office, walking in the entryway.
Okay.
So it's my goal is to do these things on the CNC machine, like 3 by 3 feet. And so, yeah, and then paint them. If you've got company colors, I can incorporate those into the design.
Awesome. So you're going to continue with this, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I've done other pieces, beach scenes and stuff like that. Beach sayings, welcome to the lake, welcome to the beach, type of thing. That I hope to.
Welcome to my house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Send down to Florida to my sister-in-law. Hopefully, she'll sell some for me down there, one of the gift shops.
So, any questions about? Yes, sir.
When you say the patterns are in a book, are they JPEGs? Are they AutoCAD?
They actually, this particular vendor on Design Bundles offers it in 5 different file types, and you get all 5. Right, it's all digital, and so you can get it in a JPEG, which I wouldn't recommend. You can get a PDF. This is an SVG file, and
Are we talking woodworking here?
yeah, well, it's wood I'm cutting here, but it's I import into the Lightburn software. I use the import function and import the SVG file, and there's all 9 of these on the image. And then I can size them. And I cut this. This is 8 by 8, and so I had some 9 by 9 or some 9-inch strips, and I copied and pasted 3 of them and cut those 3. Then the next 3 layers, cut those 3. And these top 2 layers here are just stars that are applied right to the top. And so those I were able to nest together and get a better yield out of the piece of wood. And then you just paint it and glue it together. So I use the quick and thick type bond because it dries pretty quick, and when it does dry, it dries clear. And there's glue squeeze out in here, but you can't see it. You really have to look hard to see some of the glue squeeze out down in there. So.
Any other questions? Thanks, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, I can't tell whose project this is. Is this yours, Les? Yeah. Okay.
After 32 years of making kitchens for everybody else, I'm finally making one for myself. So, and I like to incorporate things that are round when I can. It's just a thing of mine. But anyway, this is base cabinet door. There's 2 of them, a pair for the base. This is right above those, and I decided to make just a glass door. And obviously, with a round cabinet, you have to have the round crown. I just bought a simple pine primed crown. I didn't want anything real fancy, but I had to make this piece to match it. It's 4 pieces, 3 different router bits, and then I used a 1/2-inch shoulder plane to get this radius at the top here to match the rest of it. So I had to work on it by hand for a while. The muttons and mullions, these is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different pieces. Well, yeah, they're all separate pieces. These two, I routed a slot in the back, about 1/16 of an inch deep. I took bender board and put across here, all 4 places, so that I could set these on them where it was just the right radius, so I could just lay them on top of there and fit them. And then this joint here is fit. And then when everything was fit, I took these 2 pieces and I glued it with the rabbet in here was a 1/4 inch wide, and I glued a 1/4 inch strip in there and put these 2 pieces together as one, these 2 pieces together as one. And because this is so thin, there's no way to interlock them. So when I glued it all up and kept it loose from the frame, if you look at it, and please don't pick this up. If you want to see it, I'll show you. I took a piece of veneer and put on the back of this center rail to where it locks this joint in. It's still very fragile, but it does make it much more substantial than it was. And when you look at it, because of the shape of the door, you can't get the glass in there, okay? It just won't happen. So I cut this slot down the side to where that piece of glass can slide into this slot and then slide back, and then I'll use spacers to space it and then put the stop on. Any guesses on what the glass costs? I wanted restoration glass, you know, that looks old. That was $1,140.
For 6 pieces of glass?
One. It's just going to be one piece.
Oh, okay.
And so I ended up just going with regular plain glass, but that was $560. Don't have it yet. It takes, I had to make a template for them and everything. It takes about 4 weeks to get here. This door, this panel, is 3 pieces, made a form to bag it. The center section is 1/4 inch bender board, and then I took 1/4 inch MDF plywood, sanded the veneer off of both sides down to an 1/8 inch, and skinned the 1/4 inch bender board with 1/8 inch masonite on both, or MDF on both sides.
How did you apply the finish?
Huh?
How did you apply the finish?
It's all sprayed on. It's a catalyzed.
Tinted lacquer?
It's. Let me look. I took a picture because I can't ever.
Okay.
It gets really hard. Okay, it's a conversion varnish paint. So it gets really hard. It's a 2-part, it has to have a mixture and it has to be mixed correctly. It's from Sherwin-Williams. It's about $90 a gallon. So
And it's sprayable.
So it's a really durable. I had him put the same finish on the vanity in the basement. Little different color, but it's very hard.
I notice you've got this mortised out for sauce hinges.
Yeah, this door, all the rest of the doors are European, the soft close hinges, but this one I put the sauce hinges in so you couldn't see them. And the glass, there's 2 glass shelves, and they're made to line up with the mutton bars.
So how far along are you with this total kitchen?
He was spraying the last of it this morning.
Okay, so we get pictures of it next month?
It might be a little longer than that. Yeah. I will, one other thing, let me set this down before something happens. when I made the crown, it didn't fit tight, you know, on the rail on the cabinet. I wasn't too fond of that. So, and I'd never tried this before, but it works really well. Since it paints, it doesn't matter. I put packing tape on the rail, covered it so that it was smooth as I could get it on there, waxed it really good twice. And then I took Bondo and put it on here about an inch high on the back and just put it up there and wiggled it around, smashed it to it until the Bondo eased out all the way around the bottom. Held it there for a while and let it dry. And with the wax and the tape, it just popped right off. And then just sand it and clean it up, and now it fits absolutely perfectly. Worked really well.
Awesome.
So it'll probably be the best fitting crown in the whole kitchen.
Is that the only piece of curved crown?
Yeah,
Okay.
There's just the two curved cabinets, and that's it.
Any questions about what Les has done or doing? Yes, sir.
Who's doing the glass for you?
There's a place there in Wichita. We've worked with them for years. It's a stained glass place. They do all kinds of glass, but they order it from somewhere. I had to supply them with a template. I made a template that would actually fit into the door. That was a piece of 1/8 inch MDF mounted to the radius so that it would fit in there. We could check it, and they took that, and then they send that off, and they get the glass made.
So does the glass lay on top of your template? Is that
No,
how it works?
the template I made was the exact
actually fit
actual
inside that.
size
Okay.
that fits in the door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you consider plexiglass?
No, I did not. I've put a lot of time and effort
We'll
and money into this,
we'll act
so
like
I
you didn't
bought
ask
real
that
glass.
question.
But
Just when they slump that glass, they have to take your template. They make something out of metal.
they make a form.
Glass is heated and it's laid on that metal,
Yeah.
and then it slumps to that.
Actually, they don't make them out of metal. Most of the time, they're made out of wood, and the template is used once. That's how it used to be. I don't know if they've improved things or not, but that's the way it used to be. I used to make full-size templates and ship them off, and they would use it, but you could only use it once because it'd burn it so bad. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, that Bondo you used, was that just one of those auto part Bondos?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, all the joints here in this, there was little tiny cracks and chip outs in the wood, you know, and stuff like that. And even if there wasn't, I took the Bondo and I put it on every joint, on every door, every drawer front, every face frame, sanded it off, and then when he puts the first coat of paint on, he has this white stuff in a tube. I don't know what it's called. And if there's any little tiny places still left, he fills those with that, resands it, and then paints it again. All of this stuff has 3 coats of paint on it, except for that one. It's got 4.
We're talking about Bondo. Are we talking about woodworking here or not?
Well,
Auto repair.
it's a good way to cheat if it paints.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
If it doesn't paint, it would have taken me twice as long.
Probably longer than that.
Yeah.
Awesome work, Les. Really want to see this done.
Not yet, but you know, when I spray. So this is, if y'all have been reading the newsletter, I've been gave an update and I said I would bring this. This is the chair I've been working on, and I'm going to talk about this more in the program tonight. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I just wanted to bring in show and tell you may remember a couple years ago I went around my basement and took a picture of all my unfinished projects. This was one of those, so I'm knocking one of them out. The original was made in Edenton, North Carolina, which is close to where I grew up, and I am speaking at the National SAPFM Conference next weekend, a week and a half from now, and the topic is going to be sort of an approach to how to make a chair like this. So I figured it'd be good if I tried to tackle it. You know, it's not finished; it's still rough. It's an work in progress. Haven't really cleaned much up, but figured it'd be fun to bring it. It's at least, you know, it's not put together yet, so you know we could knock it apart and pass pieces around or whatever we need. But that's what I brought.
So, what's the name of that conference you're going?
So it's SAPFM, which is SAPFM, which is Society of American Period Furniture Makers.
Okay.
So period furniture, typically, you know, there's all these periods, right? And typically you're talking about pre-industrial furniture when you talk about period furniture. Doesn't mean there aren't other periods like, you know, Stickley or Green and Green or Craftsman. But typically the SAPFM is going to be focused more on Queen Anne, Chippendale, Federal, maybe some Empire, maybe some earlier stuff like, you know, William and Mary periods. But American furniture from, you know, the you know, our colonial days, from the 1600s to 1850-ish, when things started to become much more industrialized. That's typically what it is.
Okay.
And this piece is it would be transitional from Queen Anne to Chippendale.
Okay, and that's what your topic is going to be on in your talk?
The talk is going to be more about, if you wanted to reproduce a piece like this, what kind of information do you need to get? How do you go about making the patterns? How do you go about just collecting all the stuff you need? If you had, let's say you had 30 minutes of access with an actual antique, how do you go about taking all that information home and actually building one that has a half chance of being correct?
Okay. Let us know how it goes. Get an update in the newsletter?
I will, yeah.
All right. Any questions about what Cal's doing?
Joe?
What kind of wood is? Will that deal that you're going to be videotaped or anything? Because we would like to see what you're doing.
Maybe. I'll have to check. If I do a newsletter update, I'll give links out there and tell everyone how to check it out. I'm not sure if that talk will be on there. My dad's doing a talk about how to put arms on a chair like this, which is, arms are kind of almost, it doesn't double the work, but it adds a huge amount of work to a chair. And then my brother Matt, who's probably haven't heard me talk about much, he's my youngest brother. He's going to talk about the scholarship and where it was made and who made it and what makes it culturally significant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Any other questions?
Those front legs, did you see those, or hand carved on?
Absolutely, the only way to do it.
Hand carved, right.
I got the program for $3.99 on Etsy. Yeah, they're hand carved. Yes, sir.
I don't know what you call that fancy stuff across the top. How did you do that? Is that all chisel and?
Yeah, this is just some rudimentary foliage, sort of like an acanthus leaf type of deal that was just marked out and carved.
Where'd you get the pattern? Did you just make it up?
Well, I'll talk about that in the talk, but when I do the presentation, but pictures and then draw it.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys see that? So, unlike Craig, this actually was done on a scroll saw. not the laser. Story behind this, I had a friend who's about 25 years older than me, organized about 40 fishing trips for us through the years, was giving away his woodworking equipment, wanted to give a lot of it to me. He gave me the dust collector you've heard about.
Is there a lawsuit with that?
Well, so he was getting old and having a little trouble, but he gave me a bunch of his stuff. Then he went into a home shortly after that. And when he did, he said, I gave you my woodworking stuff, right? I said, yeah. Well, maybe you can make me something. I'm like, damn it. Because, of course, you have to. So I'm like, well, what do you use? He's in a 10 by 10 foot home. What do you make? Like, well, you could use a coaster. Like, okay, a coaster. We'll do that. We'll make a coaster. And I'll get a plan that looks like a fish that was 8 inch. I'll shrink it down, make it even harder to make. And then he always came up with a motto for every fishing trip. So we deserve the best was one of his favorites. So we're like, we deserve the best. So I'm like, all right, I'll put that in there. That won't be too hard. So yeah, so it was a challenge. Another friend had given me the Paduke that I use on the background, which is kind of cool. Makes it look kind of cool. We'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah. So anyway, I decided, well, I was going to just make a coaster, and then I thought, well, it's got to be filled. If it's going to have water on it, it needs to be filled. So I'll do the resin. So a guy at work had a bunch of resin left over from a table he made, and I'm like, well, I'll do that. How hard can that be? All right, well, I've never done that before, and I might not ever again. So the first one I did, there's Baltic birch on top. Apparently that has like gazillion bubbles or holes in it, so it bubbles galore. And yes, I used the heat gun and all that, and then I used it too much, and it all turned white on me. So I dug it out with a dental pick everywhere to try again. Yeah, whoever said that, you're right. Yeah. A lot of podcasts. And then tried it again. So finally, the last time I decided, well, when I was doing the real one, I decided to fill it with poly first. Another guy at work, his dad was a doctor, he had syringes, so I used that to put that stuff in there. And to fill up the holes first, and then put the resin in. And yeah, I had a leveler, and then it wasn't level, and I sanded it off, and then redid it, and sanded it off, and redid it. And anyway, it wound up coming out okay.
So how many of these are you going to make?
Well, I made 3. I thought, I was going to make 9, one for everybody on our fishing group. But I may learn how to use that laser engraver. I know. Yeah, so I stack cut 3 of them, and then the one turned into trash. So I gave him one, I kept one, and then he actually, like I said, he was diminishing. So to cut this round, I did make a router template, or a jig, to drill a 1/4 inch hole in the back and cut it round on the router. And then Jim Heavey from Wood Magazine gave a talk at one of the wood shows that he said he always put a penny in his projects to date them. And then I say, well, yeah, and that always means they'll always be worth something. So I put a penny in there and gave it to him. He was diminishing. So he opens it up, and he happened to open it up this way. How'd that penny get in there? Well, that's really cool. How'd that penny get in there? I'm like, well, whatever. And I said, but on this side, but how'd that penny?
Okay.
So then you realize, you start asking why you do projects, right? Am I doing it for me and the applause, or am I doing it for them? And you kind of realize it's like a kid with a box, playing with a box at Christmas, right, instead of the toy. You're like, well, I don't know why I'm doing these projects, but he liked the penny, so.
Good. Questions?
Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome.
Now, these are 2 corner columns for a cabinet, and unfortunately they are 6 inches too short. So someday they'll be something else.
You go down to Harbor Freight, they've got board structures down there.
Yeah, well, I decided not to do that.
Okay.
So the picture here is the the correct length ones in the cabinet, the top half of the cabinet anyway. And what's interesting about these is usually these are quarter columns, 90-degree part of a column, but in the particular piece I'm copying, it's a half. It's 180 degrees, and these I got these boards taped on it to protect the ears of the top and the bottom that wrap around so that those boards represent the front and the side of the cabinet. So, and it has this, what, you know what that's, I call it a bead in a cove, but fluted, yeah, fluted and stop bead. So.
And how did you do that?
I used, on my lathe, I made a table and a jig to hold my trim router, and that's what I did the cove with, down to there, and then I took just a little sharp bit and made just a hint of a line on the edge of the cove, two lines all the way down to give me a track, and then used a scratch stock of just a piece of metal that was shaped right, and then that line gave me a starting point to keep it straight.
So, what are you going to do? Shrink the cabinet or make new columns?
No, I've made new ones already. And the funny thing is that the second set went much quicker.
Really? Funny how that happens, isn't
it?
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. So, how far along are you with that cabinet?
I've got the bottom part, which is a desk. The desk, it's a secretary, so it's got a bookcase. This is the bookcase part of it. And then I still have the bonnet top to make. And there's three doors for that have shells on them, which I haven't even started the doors yet.
Okay.
So.
The solid wood doors?
Yeah.
Panel?
No. Well, actually, the outside ones do have a panel, but.
Okay.
But they're
not curved glass?
No. That's shaped. The doors are shaped, though.
Okay. Very good. Awesome craftsmanship. I'm just amazed at wow. Thank you. Bob, you can ask him that question during the break. Okay. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Jim. How are you? All right. Hello, everyone, again. All right, good. All right, I brought 2 Spanish fireplace bellows. This one here was done 25 years ago with a scroll saw and a Dremel. This one was done last week. The reason why I was building these is after 25 years, there's 8 species of lumber, different kinds of lumber in this one. Okay? This one has 5. To me, when I did this, when you're doing intarsia, you're always thinking about color and contrast. This is a lot of contrast right here. And this is wingy in here. Wow, that's a close-up of it. There's wingy, babinga, cherry, and walnut in this one. And this one here has cardinal wood, Shakati Vega, butternut, cherry, walnut, mahogany, and red heart. But the reason I did it was to see, after another 25 years, to see what the contrast, if we around that long. I have no idea. Maybe.
I will be.
I know you will. Yeah. I hope so. I don't have no idea. But anyway, what's the contrast going to be on this one? So that was the point behind it. So I guess if you're going to make an intarsia piece, kind of think of the different colors of woods that you're going to use and see how they play out. Are there any questions?
Did you make both of them?
Yes. This one was 25 years ago. I had dark hair. And this one was last week.
The finish on these are the same: shellac, satin finish, varnish, and wax. The same thing with here too: shellac, satin finish, varnish, and wax. Yeah, still there. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, Joe.
You want me to keep that new one at my house for 25 years, and then I'll bring it to you?
Sounds good. We'll figure something out. That's an interesting point, though. In the house, this is by my fireplace, of course, right? And no sunlight's hitting it. This is just after 25 years being on the east side of the wall. The only light that's hitting is on top, and as the light hits the sculpted wood, you see shadow lines. And you also see a shadow line against the wall here, which makes it a little bit more interesting. You've done Intarsia. You know how it goes. Any questions? Go ahead.
No, what I do is I call you up and, hey, make me this piece, and I'll...
Oh, yeah, you've done that a couple, or
Yeah.
once or, yeah. It's all good. He's helped me out with a lot of projects, too. If you have any other questions, come see me at the table, and I'll try to answer them. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Jim. So it's a box.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd have never guessed.
My granddaughter's graduating from high school this year. My son tells me she keeps all her precious collectibles in shoe boxes. So I thought maybe she needed something a little nicer. I drew this up and showed it to my wife, and she said, yeah, that's big enough. Built it. She looked at it and she said, you can't put much stuff in those drawers. I thought you were going to, she needs a chest type box so you can put big stuff in it. Well, she might get two, but I don't know. This is hard maple, curly maple. What did you tell me, David? Fiddleback mahogany that came from the guild, I don't know, 15 years ago. Somebody brought in a stack of veneer and left it here.
So, what'd you put for a finish on there?
That's, well, I dyed it twice.
What kind of dye?
Trans tint, and it's really difficult to sand it completely off. Because I did a couple test boards, and they look good, and I put it on here, and it looked like it'd been dragged through a mud puddle. So I don't know if it was old dye or what, but and then I got a lighter brown. That's the original medium brown that brings out the curls, and then I did a lighter brown on top of it. So.
And then the drawers are the fiddleback mahogany?
Yeah.
Is that a veneer on top of plywood?
Yes.
Okay.
Both sides.
So what kind of keepsakes is she going to keep in this?
I don't know. I've never seen her keepsakes.
Okay.
Small ones, I hope.
Engagement rings?
Well, no. High school. High school.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
So when are you going to give this to her?
Graduation.
Which is
May.
In May?
Yeah.
Does she know about this?
No.
Okay. Awesome surprise.
Yeah. But it'll surprise me if I get the other one finished in time.
Okay. All right. Any questions about what Steve's done? Thank you, sir. Is that it? Very good.
I got one thing, Jim.
Okay.
Now, Jim, you're always talking about whether it's woodworking or technology. That's technology. That's woodworking. Which one do you want to use?
We need to have a discussion about this.
At one point in time, this would be considered technology.
Just because I have 5 of these doesn't mean that I'm not a woodworker.
It's difference of learning.
Yeah.
The learning curve at the time that you have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is, given the opportunity, you would use technology. Is that what you're telling me?
We need to discuss this over a beer.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you doing our show and tell every week. Thanks for everybody who brought stuff in. Great stuff. I love seeing everybody's work. We're going to take a... Matt, got an announcement?
Yep. Normally, I would try to get an award, for show and tell. I wasn't able to do it this time, but Wayne in the back, he's donated his own personal $25, and they put tickets on for everybody who participated. So when it gets drawn, make sure all of you thank him for donating the money for the drawing. I couldn't come up with any.
Awesome. We're going to take a 7 or 8 minute break. We have refreshments as usual. We're going to come back, and then you got to listen to me some more.
Hi, my name is Mike Jones, and welcome to another episode of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's ongoing series of machine safety videos. Today's video will introduce you to the safety rules and requirements of the Powermatic hollow chisel mortiser. Keep in mind that, like all safety videos, this video only covers the safety concerns of this machine and is not a complete training program for the use of this equipment. When in the shop, please direct any questions about using this or other machines to the on-duty shop foreman. He or she is there to act as your main resource in helping you to keep safe and provide advice and assisting you to successfully complete your project. Always remember, the most important of safety concerns is to wear approved safety glasses with side shields at all times while in the KCWG shop. Your regular glasses are not approved for use when participating in any shop activity while you are at the Guild. Hollow chisel mortisers are used to cut square or rectangular holes in wood, generally for the mortise side of a mortise and tenon joint. The hollow chisel mortiser is equipped with a square chisel with a rotating auger bit within the chisel that serves to remove large amounts of material while the chisel cuts a square or rectangular hole, leaving the square corners and smooth walls of the mortise. Hollow chisel mortisers are similar to a drill press in that the mortiser combines the square chisel with the rotating drill bit in the center. The bit inside the chisel clears out most of the material while the chisel ensures that the hole is clean, square, and smooth inside. When using the hollow chisel mortiser, one must first install the proper size chisel. The Kansas City Woodworkers Guild has a selection of mortising chisels sized from 1/4 inch to 3/4 inch. The mounting of the chisel and bit requires that you mount the chisel into the collet while inserting the bit shank into the chuck. The chuck is identical to one used in a drill press. It is best to use a piece of scrap stock to hold the chisel and bit in place while you tighten the chuck with the available chuck key. Once the bit is securely mounted in the chuck, you then loosen the collet, holding the chisel, and raise the chisel about 1/16 of an inch, and then retighten the collet screw. It is recommended that you then turn the chuck by hand one complete turn to ensure that nothing is binding. There are stop screws that allow you to set limits on the side-to-side and front-to-back travel of the bed. If you're not familiar with the setup procedure, please ask the foreman on duty to help you with this procedure. It's very important to remember to have your stock securely clamped into position before turning on the machine and cutting your mortises. When cutting through mortises, please be sure to have a piece of sacrifice material under your work so that you don't risk cutting into the machine bed. Another important thing to remember when using the hollow chisel mortiser is at the position of the waste port on the chisel. You will want to mount the chisel so that the waste port is leaving the waste behind in the previously cut hole. This helps to allow the waste material to not build up inside the chisel and generate friction heat, which will dull the chisel and the bit prematurely. Please ask the shop foreman for assistance if you're not sure how to set this up. It is also a really good idea to check the chisel and bit for sharpness before you start. A dull chisel can make things a lot more difficult and affect the quality of your mortise. Please ask the foreman to help you with sharpening the chisel if you're not familiar with how to do it. When you start the machine, be sure to never touch the chisel with the bit spinning. You should never allow your hands or fingers to be closer than 3 inches from the chisel when cutting your mortise. The auger is exposed on the side of the chisel where the waste port is located and can cause severe injury should you touch it. Remember, when cutting your mortises, the bit and chisel, ideally, should be fully engaged. Cut your first hole, then move the bed about 2/3 the size of the next hole to make the next cut. This puts less strain on the bit and eliminates the deflection of the chisel and bit and the high level of heat that can be generated by the deflection. Following this procedure will produce a cleaner cut and more professional looking results. Also, never try to hand hold the piece you're cutting. Your stock should be firmly clamped in the machine before you turn the mortiser on. Remember, the successful use of the hollow chisel mortiser is very dependent upon a good setup, especially when performing several repeat cuts on table or chair legs. When you're finished, you should take a few moments to check your work area, clean up the machine and the floor around where you've been working. This is Mike Jones. Thanks for watching.
county over is Perquimans County, which was, I had family in Perquimans County back from about the 1650s. So it was very much connected to the culture I grew up in. Now with my dad building furniture, you get into the period furniture and sort of the Sapphum group and the people that build furniture around the country. They think that all things were nice must have been made in Philadelphia or Newport, Rhode Island, like Tom's building a Newport piece. Sometimes they might give credit to Charleston, North Carolina, but people wouldn't think North Carolina. So my dad has been really one of the supporters of building local furniture because that's where he grew up. It's kind of a very pride in your area, just like we have pride in Kansas City barbecue, right? So this piece was kind of always on my bucket list. And I had a head start here because my dad built a couple of these years ago, so he had already done a lot of the work on the patterns, all the stuff. You know, my dad just flies through and makes it, so he didn't have a lot of notes or anything, so we had to recreate a lot of stuff. There's 3 of these right now in museums, or there's 2 in museum collections. One is at Colonial Williamsburg, one is at Museum of Early Southern Decorative Arts in Winston-Salem, and one is in a private collection, which I had an amazing opportunity to go put my hands all over it, measure it, take pictures and stuff back in October with a collector who is furnishing an amazing 18th century house. I don't think it's supposed to be public knowledge who it was, but they're renovating Carter's Grove. And Carter's Grove is completely private. You can't get back there, but they've sunk just crazy amounts of money into Carter's Grove for a private residence. But the amazing thing is that Carter's Grove is an amazing Georgian mansion in the countryside outside of Williamsburg. So going back to the PowerPoint, where do you start when you want to do this? So first you're like, okay, I need to find out all the information I can. So you go to the museums. Both those museums have public photos. I also was able to take a lot of photos myself. If you look at those pictures in the middle, I'm not sure why they flipped, but those are a couple of my photos. And then you just have to usually you can take some dimensions, but you can't really measure a whole lot of curves, right? So you have to take photos from the right angle, and you have to measure, key dimensions. And a lot of it has to do with drawing. You kind of have to draw, the pictures you have, and then you have to draw it and then compare it back. So you end up, when you make a chair, and not just this chair, on anything, you end up with patterns of all kinds of things. And I had the advantage of my dad having patterns, and so I had hurriedly traced some of his patterns years ago. And you have to be careful, because if you trace a pattern of a pattern of a pattern, stuff gets off. So I've been struggling with that a little bit, but here's just a sample. Here's a leg pattern. I always put a little extra on because you like to use this material to do your knee blocks. Here's the crest rail pattern. So you have a pattern that is here, but you also have a curve this way. So you have to have 2 patterns for that. This is the splat, and you only have to do half, right? Because you want to flip it, because you want symmetry. The back leg is pretty unique. It's very elegant. I would say that in general, you've got your large urban centers in the 18th century, like Philadelphia and Boston, which people were coming over from England, and they were in the refined shops. So you have your much more sophisticated furniture that matches the sophisticated English pattern making books like Chippendale's Director and those other things. So you'll see a lot more of those type of designs that are more sophisticated, if you will. And then if you get away from those areas, things get a little bit unique. I would say this is a very unique chair, although sometimes the furniture gets in the neighborhood of crude or folksy. It's not really primitive. It's more like it's like they saw something cool and they remembered it, and then they went out and executed it very well. But it's not like textbook, if you will. So this is This is sort of a transitional period. So all the carving and the ball and claw feet are indicative of the Chippendale period. Although this rounded crest and the rolled back crest is more of a Queen Anne style. So it's transitional between the Queen Anne styles and the Chippendale styles. Does that make sense? Usually a Chippendale, pure Chippendale piece might have ears, and it will be more masculine, if you will. Although this is obviously very broad. It has very English proportions. If you start getting into the scholarship, American furniture is a little more vertical, and English furniture is a little more broad. Is that? And it's English furniture that comes over and it's been reinterpreted by a lot of times Scottish craftsmen, English craftsmen that are doing things, and that's just sort of the scholarship of it. There's back leg pattern. You've got your arm patterns. There's 3 arm patterns. You've got the top of the arm. You got the stub, and then so there's just no limit to the amount of patterns you can do. Sometimes it's a little frustrating when you're only making one, because it doesn't seem to make sense to put all that investment into your patterns. But definitely, if you're making multiples, that's just absolutely key, because there's just no way to duplicate your work unless you have a good template.
Do you change those into wooden patterns then?
I would absolutely do these. If I was going to do more than one, these would absolutely need to be wood. This is kind of a chintzy way because I'm trying to save time. I traced these, and then I've been sort of redrawing them because I thought they were comparing them to the actual museum photos, whereas I thought things were too broad or whatever. So I've done some adjustments. Just like this splat pattern, I went a full 1/16 inside my lines when I cut this out, and then when I cut my splat, I still thought it was too bulky, so I went and recut them again. So.
Does the height of the seat change over a period of time?
You mean during the eras?
Like right now, I think it's 18 inches.
I would say that you're probably looking at 16.5 to 17, and that's the way they always were. So I would say and once you put the upholstery in, you're probably pretty similar. That hasn't really changed over time.
Okay.
So the chairs that I make are as usually, especially if they're faithful copies, are going to be still comfortable to use now. So.
And notice it's quite wide. I mean, it's wider than even a normal person.
Well, this is going to be an armchair, so your armchairs are usually made an inch taller and 2 inches wider, or that's a rule of thumb. And there's many rules that are made to be broken, right? But typically you have 2 inches wider because you don't want someone to get in and push the arms. The arms are not. They're strong. They're made well. They have strong joinery, but that would be a weak point where you could push the arms out and break a chair, and you find that they might crack on the sides. So usually you make them with bigger proportions. Mark?
Was there any influences from Newport makers in North Carolina, or did it primarily come from England?
I would say that.
Influences.
So you have quite a Quaker tradition in Perquimans County, not as much Chowan County, which is Edenton. So you probably are familiar with the Thomas White shop. That was a Quaker shop that has been known to have visits between Newport, Rhode Island, and Perquimans County, because there was no interstates. Their interstate was the waterways. So there is some influence of Newport in Perquimans County, but not so much in Chowan. This is more of an English sort of a Williamsburg type of cabinet making tradition.
Did they ever do undercut claws?
I never saw that. No.
Yeah, that's kind of a peculiar thing.
You guys know I'm a nerdy period guy. A lot of people might not care about this, but you should never see an undercut claw in anything American unless it's Newport. If you did that, it would just be like no good.
What's an undercut claw?
So, an undercut talon would be, let's say we made this talon. See that little claw at the bottom? On a Newport piece, the claws would be much more elongated, and sometimes the cabinet makers would show off and would hollow out the back. So it really looked like more naturalistic of a claw holding a ball. Whereas that's the only place that I know of, unless someone was just messing around. But as far as the sophisticated cabinet makers, Newport did that. It was never done in the other regions. So going back to the, I probably could talk about this chair for like 4 hours, so I'm going to try to make sure I jump around. There's, you know, the joinery. A lot of people shy away from chairs because the joinery is a bit of a challenge. This is actually pretty easy because this is straight. So like a more challenge would be a Chippendale chair where the back is splayed, and then you have to do this trapezoid, which is fairly straightforward, right? Doing this trapezoid is pretty straightforward, but then when you have to twist this rail as well, that adds another element of complexity. When we did our Chippendale chairs a few years ago at the Guild, we did that twisted joint, and that was a stumbling block, I might say, for quite a few people, David. Yeah, yeah. It's and it, you know, you have to really sort of, until you really understand what you're trying to do, it's confusing. So this was, I think most of the 18th century furniture was done with straight tenons and diagonal mortises, whereas it's pretty easy on a table saw to do straight mortises and just cant your table saw. So this one is done with straight mortises, and we canted the tenons. So that's the way that was done.
Cal, sorry, I know you do period furniture. Is there any, or do you ever follow through history where they've gone along and done it this way for so long, and then someone kind of throws something in a little different and has a change in the way things are made?
Well, as far as like a chair joinery, I think still the best ones are done with mortise and tenon. Now there's lots of different materials, like using plies and things like that were never done. Yeah, I guess so, but this is still relevant. I would say you could make a modern chair with this same exact joinery. So I kind of stick to the traditional joinery. Where were we at on the PowerPoint? Let's see. Go back to the picture I told you before. So this isn't just an idea, and I know that's hard to read there, but trying to get dimensions to try to do an actual reproduction. If you look, I bet there's 20 different dimensions that I try to establish to do a correct ball and claw foot. You've got the ball at the biggest point. You want to know the top of the ball in the front, top of the ball in the back, the biggest point of the ball. How far is that off the floor? Diameter of the foot at the floor. How much does it curve in? How thick are the talons? How tall are the claws? You want consistency in your knuckle to knuckle dimensions, and each one are different. If you made them all the same, that wouldn't be good enough. So you need to, and sometimes I've drawn enough, I've carved enough, I can sort of understand where they are, but I still have to go through the exercise of getting all those dimensions correct, so that then I could lay it out properly. Does that make sense to everyone?
Do museums frown when you walk in with your tape measure?
Yeah. So there's a whole discussion on how to get information from museums and be respectful and so that they don't have you to run along. So you develop relationships. You understand that you're not going in there with your mortar encrusted Stanley 30-footer, right? And you just let it all retract, and slam. Just to being respectful is probably the biggest thing. Making sure you have gloves. I should have put a picture in here, but I have a cool picture of when my dad and I copied the chairs from the Ferry Farm. There's a cool picture of us in there making measurements, and we had our gloves on, and we were there with the curator. And I would say that you will find that, I'm sure this is not every case, but in many cases, the museum curators are so excited that someone's excited about their artifacts or their art that they'll probably engage, especially if they know that you're serious. So, yeah, being respectful. You know, the Nelson, for example, I have very great relationships there. I'd have to make a few phone calls to actually I have an okay relationship in St. Louis, but I haven't engaged them in like 15 years, so I'd have to refresh. But when my brother, my dad, and I went to the East Coast in October, we got amazing hands-on access at 2 locations, 3 locations really, and then the 4th one was like we had a wall there. So it's kind of like it depends on the people. Winter is the one that was like just like was not helpful whatsoever.
You may have mentioned this earlier, but do you ever use story sticks? Take a piece of wood and
Yeah.
measure the height and width and.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would, if it needs to be, especially if I had something vertical that I need to replace. You know, I always use those for turnings, because I know that, you know, we have a turners group, we have a scroll saw group, we have a carving group, we have a hand tool group. I kind of do all those things. When you make one of these, you kind of have to. Of course, I'm not turning anything on here. Going back to the PowerPoint, I'll just run through some other points. As you make a chair, the first thing you usually do is you work on the back. So you cut the legs, and then you work on this joinery of the back leg, and you glue that up. So you see the picture. That's kind of the first thing, and then you make this shoe, and this shoe is essentially a term of it's a relatively complicated piece. It's got a mortise, and it's shaped, and it's got a bead on it, and you can't access anymore, so it has to be completed before you. It has to be completely done and sanded out before you glue it on there. Otherwise, you can't get back to it. And if you want to see, this is always. It's like it's tight, 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 and you take that one last swipe, and then it drops in there, and it's sloppy. So this, you know, getting a tight fit here, from joint to joint to the shoe, is just. If you look here, I must have put a little bit of extra. You know, I must have not been perfectly flat when I scraped that because I've got a little gap here. So you try to aim to not do that, but that's what I have. I'm not going to Bondo it. I might put some dark wax in the crevices. So looking at the rest of the back, obviously the next thing you have to do is work on the splat, because you have to work this all as a unit, and this splat has so much work on it that you want to get that complete before you glue it up. If you tried to do this splat before you after you glued it up, you're just moving the chair around all the time. You're clamping. You kind of have to think through all the steps. Go back to that PowerPoint. So there you see multiple SIGs represented. So you see I'm scrolling that out, and then I filed the back. This is one thing interesting. It's kind of cool when you turn this aside. This looks more delicate because you do a back cut. You see the front is full, and then you cut this all out at an angle so everything looks lighter. It's a 1/2 inch thick, but you would think it might be less. If you look at the back, all the piercings are a lot bigger than the back because you file them out on a bias. And so that gets tricky too on the scroll saw, because you only can cut one direction, because you always have to have your bias the same direction. It gets tricky, and you know, trying to clean up in all these corners. A lot of times a file won't fit down there because you bruise your other side. So you end up using chisels, and maybe sometimes I use a knife to try to cut down. And there's still, I'm looking at it now, I mean, there's still some cleanup. You know, after this is stained and finished, most of that will go away because it's end grain. But there's a lot of cleanup to go there. And then obviously the carving. So classic motif is the volutes. And I've always struggled with volutes, honestly, because if they're off, and it's hard to fix them. And trying to make this volute look like that volute, you know, you do your best to do a pattern, then you draw it on there, and then you carve it off, and you're always the best thing to do is lay out all your chisels, and you know, you basically use a mallet and a chisel to establish your curves, your outside curves, and then you carve down to your line. But it's nice to know that I'd used, you know, a number 5/16, and then I used a 5/12, and then, you know, have it all laid out so they do it again. And then later on, you haven't been working on it, and then you do these and you forgot what chisels you used, but they're slightly different sizes anyway. And then you have these up here, which are different sizes. So there's a lot of volutes on there. I'll also have volutes on all the knees. So there's quite a few volutes on this chair, which
volutes of the circle thing.
yeah. So these volutes are these little spirals. So it's like the diameter has to be smooth, and it's kind of you know, your classic Fibonacci series. That's kind of what it's. But it's supposed to be. It should be a more an exact volute would be increasing at the same ratio all the way out. Not to say that you don't have some artistic freedom there. The other carving of this interlacing splat, it seems like it would be easy, but honestly I struggled with it because you take a little bit off here, then your line is off here, and you take a little bit off here and it's off there. So I still think I've got some work to do, but it's way better than my first attempt. When you scroll it out, you file it, keeping all those things in line, there's a lot of work there. And then these rosettes or flowers, if you will, they're easy to carve, but it's also extremely easy to pop that little button off right here. And I've busted many of those off. So, yeah, it's always good to, as much as you can, and this is something I'm terrible at sweeping your floor before you start, because you lose a chip. That chip is so valuable because you can glue that back in. But if you have to recreate it, it's just not going to work. I know I've made some decent looking repairs before, but you can do a lot of work and your repair just is never as good as that chip that comes out. And this was a very brittle piece of wood. So every time I hit it with, this board also had just a slight twist in it. So I could clamp it down to my bench, but then it might be a little high here, and then you hit it with, and you could feel the rattle, and it's like, oh man, it's gonna bust the whole thing up. So I had to really take my time. It's in pretty decent shape, but you want that very clean before you glue this up. I didn't really talk about this, but you want to figure out the joinery of your crest rail. Go back to that back assembly photo. You want to do that joinery before you carve it because you've got some chances to recover. So if you look at that bottom picture, and I'm not sure why they flipped, but one of the hardest things to do is to you fit this splat here, and you've got your tenon going up, and these are left long, and then you have to fit these straight across. Not only do they have to fit this way, but they also have to fit in this dimension. So you have to really do a good job of keeping everything nice and perpendicular, and you have to lay a straight edge and cut with hand tools everything across so that you're in a perfect plane, so that when you glue it up, you have no cracks, or so your joints are nice and tight. So that's something that is very fussy. I've messed up numerous. Luckily, this one went together nicely first time. And then another thing you have to watch out for is when you chisel this, you basically chisel a mortise into the top of you chisel a tenon into the top of the leg that fits into a mortise on the crest. When I have a tendency to undercut those because I have the cheeks of the tenon, or not the cheeks of the tenon, but the base at the bottom of the tenon. It's easy to undercut those, and when you shape this, that comes out. So sometimes it'll produce a crack. I can see right there I've got a little bit of a crack there, probably because I undercut my shoulders. Yeah. You know, it's hand cut. I'm okay with a little bit, but you also want to strive for pretty good joinery.
You don't want your dad to see that, right?
You know, my work is different than my dad's, and I think it stands up on its own. But yeah, I want my dad to like it. Yeah, he's a high standard. So yeah, I agree. I agree with you there. Not too many people will come into my house and will even care about that, but, yes, sir.
Is this traditional glue or is this type bond?
I use Carpenter's glue, Elmer's, or Type Bond 1, just regular. And it is, a lot of people use hide glue. I just never have gotten into it. I've done a few things with hide glue, but this is what I grew up using. It always works. And it is semi-reversible. If you soak it and heat it, you can get stuff apart. So I would never do this with Type Bond 3 because sometimes you get in a glue up and it's not going well. You got to back out. You got to get out of it and you got to wipe everything down. It's water soluble, but it's not easy to get apart with water. But that's what I grew up doing, just Elmer's or Type Bond 1.
Cal, real quick from YouTube, someone wants to know, what is the material?
This is mahogany. This is most likely Peruvian mahogany. So which is Honduran mahogany, just sourced from Peru. This might be old stock, but it might be newer stock bought from Erie, which I have gotten most of my lumber from Erie Lumber in Pennsylvania for the last 15 to 20 years. So I don't know exactly, but it was older. It could have been older stock.
Where would in the original would have been in mahogany?
Yes.
Where would that mahogany have come from?
That would probably have come from Santo Domingo, or from the islands. It would have been Cuban mahogany or Santo Domingan mahogany, the true mahogany, and even that was very, very heavily harvested in the 18th century, and they got into Honduran mahogany not too far. I mean, you can still get it now, but mahogany, the demand has been pushed so far down over the last 30 years that there's really no supply, so it's very expensive. But you can still get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily have a problem using some of the African mahogany substitutes, but as of yet, I haven't had to do a lot of that.
So during that time period, because France, took over a lot of those islands down there.
Yeah.
They took thousands and thousands of mahogany logs back to France.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely pushing the mahogany into Europe as well. Use it for ballast and all that. So it was. There's some interesting reading on that, and usually it's very culturally relevant on what labor was used, and was valued. It was valued very. Sometimes in the 18th century, you could see that a piece made out of maple would be a third or a quarter of the value of the same piece made in mahogany, because it was just really so valued. So whenever I'm reproducing a piece, I try to stay with the appropriate wood. If the original was made out of mahogany, I would try to do mahogany. Like there's different regions would be okay. Like if I was doing a Newport piece, you would typically see that out of mahogany, so that's where I would try. If it was something out of Connecticut, I would probably go cherry, because they always use cherry in Connecticut. So those are things that you just learn over the years. In Philadelphia was a lot of mahogany, some walnut, so walnut's appropriate for Philadelphia. Walnut's very appropriate for a lot of North Carolina furniture. You could go on and on and on and talk of discussion.
Coastal plain or Piedmont?
Coastal.
Coastal.
Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Let's see what else I have. We're getting to, what time is it getting to?
20 of.
I don't want to waste everybody's time. Go to the next one. Yeah, we glue up the back. This is always a big milestone, because then you can shape everything, and everything has to flow into one another. You have to. One of the funny stories that my dad likes to say, he took some chairs to a craft show back in the 80s, and an old guy came up to him and said, "Man, that's a big piece of wood you used to make that," because he thought it was all one big piece of wood. But you want it to flow like it's all grown together, if you will. So that's a really fun part of woodworking, is the shaping. you definitely can get yourself in trouble by overshaping. You want your curves to be smooth. You don't want humps, bumps. You want everything to be. Furniture making is very tactile. You don't want to come over and grab it and you feel, oh man, there's a hump there. And I think when I've taught some of my classes, we shape cabriole legs. I think sometimes I like to look away and feel it, so that I don't let my eyes get in the way. And you can feel it in your fingertips whether you've got a hump you have to work on. And these are in pretty solid shape, and there's a lot of work to do yet because I've stayed away from these because I've got arms to put on here. You can see I left my reference point here so that I can attach the arms. Let's see. What else, Chris? Yeah, so the front legs, it's your standard cabriole leg. It's got ball and claw feet. I've done quite a few ball and claw feet at this point. I would say the big challenge on this is that you want to try to capture I could do just a plain old ball and claw foot, but I'm trying to reproduce this chair, so I want to at least attempt to capture the character of the original ball and claw feet for this chair, or for this set of chairs. I would say that the front three are relatively close to a Philadelphia foot. It does have no webbing and a peak it has a point in between the talons. More a Philadelphia one would have more of a webbing that goes across, and the back talon is very unique. It's kind of like one big talon, very sharp all the way up, which is not what you would. I don't know of another. It's just very unique. So if I were to reproduce this piece without that, it would be missing it. So I've got one of them done. Some of you have taken my ball and claw footstool classes in the past. You'll know that the ball and claw feet is just a series of steps. You do this, then you do this, then you do that. And then at a certain point, you go from a mechanic to an artist. So at a certain point, you're just following the steps. And then at the last minute, you're trying to give it the character. It takes a little bit more artistry. It's a lot more mechanical than you think. I would say that some people would say, "Man, I could never do that because, I'm not a sculptor." But a lot of it is just laying out a line and then cutting with a chisel to the line.
You kind of teased about you'd put this aside for a while. When you put a piece aside, how much trouble do you have rematching the wood? Is there an issue involved?
No, I've never had a problem with that because I'll go over it completely before I finish it. I'll go over it again, and I've never had too much of a problem with that. What I've had a problem with more likely is that the rails and the splat were made out of two different trees, and so the mahogany can be so variable, and from light to red to dark to curly to straight to just all kinds of crazy differences. So I've had some issues before of, especially some of the modern, some of the mahogany that you get these days is not of high quality. It's very soft and very light colored. So you have to be careful to not source that type. This is actually really nice wood. This is a very, very nice and dense wood. Probably the brittleness of the splat is probably the one thing I've had trouble with, but everything else is really good stock. You can tell that the back legs are a much lighter tree than the front legs. I'll probably finish this with Bondo and converge for the paint. No, I'll probably finish this with orange shellac, and if I'm feeling crazy, I might spray it, but typically I brush it because I feel like the brush adds the sort of, it adds a level of difficulty because you have runs and everything, but then that shellac sort of runs into the corners and it adds a little more depth. If you can control your drips and stuff, I prefer the brush. But there's no doubt when you brush shellac, you'll come around and you'll see you got drips all over the back. It's inevitable, but so it's possible that I might convince myself to spray this one, but
Would you spray shellac as well?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing better than the smell of shellac in the shop. I love it. I also like bourbon too, so maybe they work together.
Is there typically a colorant put on there before it's shellacked? Is it dyed or anything?
I would say
some of the antique stuff looks very dark.
Well, so a lot of the antiques have been finished with oil and boiled linseed oil over the years. Can get very black. I would say that I have traditionally put color on most of my stuff, especially if I have problems with the wood grain matching. So if the woods are having trouble, I will color it to try to even out some of the color differences. And I use aniline dyes, I use transient dyes. So that's something my go-to. On this one, I'm probably thinking no stain because I think the wood is of good enough quality that it's going to stand out alone. And I think the color probably would be really nice with just shellac. Or maybe I might put like a gold on there to sort of warm it just a touch. But, so that's kind of some of the things I've done in the past. I probably will fill it with shellac. I probably will not use a filler. I'll probably just, the typical approach that I like is if I'm going to dye it, I will dye it, and then I'll do a 2 heavy coats of shellac, like thick brushed on, and I'll sand the heck out of it. And that helps with that. It doesn't completely fill the pores, but I will sand the heck out of it, and I'll have all kinds of sand through over the dye. And then I'll dye it again, and that usually takes care of that issue. But if I don't dye it, then I don't have to worry about that.
What about the upholstery? Is that where you go crazy with your color?
It depends, you know.
I mean, is there a standard for what there must be? However it was historically, so would it be in your area, would it be blues or reds or golds or greens?
Anything. There's no rule of thumb. Some of the best ones were done with like needlepoint. Some of them were done with leather. You know, leather's always a good choice, but I haven't really gotten that far. Let's see, did I have? Yes, sir.
Someone asked earlier about the dyeing the wood or anything, but potassium diochromate was often used to darken mahogany.
Yeah, I've seen that done, and I've never quite gotten there.
You know, don't want to do it.
Yeah, well, it's toxic.
Supposedly Napoleon liked that the way the wood looked, and after they started doing this finish in France, all the wood finishers started dying. Literally, I mean, they were dying because they were using this stuff just like applying water to it, and it was.
I've seen it done, and you just hear so toxic it is. So some people will use lye, especially like on cherry. You're a finisher.
We do that in the finishing class.
I have done that some, not on mahogany, but I think it would do that as well. I think lye would work on mahogany. I haven't experimented with that. Freddie Roman, a lot of you know who Freddie. He used to say that the best mahogany ager he thought was the packets of Dunkin' Donuts iced tea. So when he would go over there and get that, he would mix the tea, and he thinks that would be the perfect dye that kind of gives it just a little age. And he said, no other tea will work. But I don't know what they put in there. I think that there's some other finishers that I know that use lye. I'm trying to think of the one other material that I've experimented with, but it goes really red. But then you can tone it down by putting like green in your oil. You know, if you oil it, which a lot of times I don't. What else do I have on the thing? I think I've covered most of it. Yeah, what's left? You can see the pictures there. I've got to carve the knees. I've got to finish the ball and claw feet. got to put the arms on. There's probably 3 full days of work if I was in the shop full time and putting arms on, just because there's so many phases and it's an iterative process. This is actually unique because it's mortise. They're mortise and tenons, which I don't like that, but that's the way the original was done. And they'll actually have a tenon in here. I'll have to put a mortise and a tenon here. Although many of the fine chairs were just done with like a recess, like a rabbet, and you put a long screw and then you plug that. So I might do that because I think that's a fine method, and it's a heck of a lot easier. But you have to make a recess there because you can't have it just holding on the screw. It has to fit in a really nice tight pocket. And let's see, what else? It'll have a traditional mortise and tenon slip seat with jute webbing and probably cotton batting or polyester batting and burlap underneath and muslin over the top.
You may have mentioned this earlier, but what are you going to be doing with this chair? Is it going to go in your house? Is it going somewhere?
Yeah, it's just for me.
Just for
it's another
you?
one of those pieces. My wife says, "Why are we building that? What are we going to do with it?"
So are you going to build a second one to match?
No, this is a single.
That's just curious. All right, thank you.
Yeah, this is a single. The Philadelphia chairs that we did in the Guild a few years ago, I've got a unfinished project was my pair to that one. I finished the first one, and the other one is a little farther along than this, but close to that same phase. So, there's a few other details. I think these rails get cut out to take some of the lightness. I think there's a scallop detail that gets cut out. It's just simple cutting to shape. I've got to make the knee blocks on the back legs as well. So and then there's just a lot of cleanup. Everything has to be gone over. I clean up the ball and claw feet with a small scraper by hand, and they really does a nice job of cleaning them up. But yeah, but it's also fun. I enjoy it. It's nice. As a construction manager, some of my days are more stressful than others, but this is kind of, I can get out in my shop and throw the garage door up on a nice day, a nice evening, and the June bugs come in and hit me, and but that's what I do a lot of utilitarian woodworking, but this is when I can get charged up, when I can do some more of a more shapely, carved, fully integrated piece. This is a nice. I think I can execute this, but it's also a nice challenge, and I have to take my time and really work on my quality, my really try to up my game. So that's about it. I don't want to take more time. Again, this was kind of last minute, so I could have been more organized. But any other questions from anybody?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Well, that's our. I have one.
Now this is answering your collection.
All right. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Go
much.
camera.
Awesome.
You didn't think you'd get away without that?
No, I didn't. I don't need one. That's our meeting, everyone. Of course, thank you for coming. Great to see everybody. Help clean up if you can. Feel free to hang out and look at the project some more, and introduce yourself to somebody you haven't met before.
Thank you for stepping.
A special thank you to our guest today, to the Guild's Leadership Committee, and for more information about the Guild, upcoming classes, and events, please visit our website kcwg.org. You can also find us on social media by searching for Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. And remember to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.